Hello everybody, welcome back to RPG Radio, your favorite station for builds and being smooth. Today's episode is all about wrapping up our Purifier build from a few videos ago and sending her on a dry run through Port Valbury. Port Valbury is a roguelike dungeon, a key dungeon. If you're not familiar with the concept, you use a skeleton key to get in here. You only get one shot while you are doing it, so if you die in there, you die and you can't go pick up your stuff, can't go pick up any experience. Everything is lost if you die in there. So seemed like a pretty good way to send this build up. Now, it is a YouTube video. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe your heart out if you haven't done that already. But if you have, I appreciate you a whole bunch. Thanks for hanging out with us. Now, since this is a part 2 for this build, basically, a little bit has changed in terms of skills, gear, devotions, all sorts of stuff. And even beyond this video, I tweaked a little bit more to make some even bigger changes to it. So I'll talk to you about the transition from part 1 to part 2, and then I'll let you know what the other big changes are towards the end. They're not really life-changing, but they are devotion and gear changes, so things do come in and happen that maybe you weren't expecting. But anyway, let's talk about the skills first. We'll recap those so you get some idea. The Thermite Mine, the Word of Renewal, Fire Strike, and Mortar Trap are going to be our big 4 cornerstone abilities. These 4 abilities work incredibly well together at dealing damage and an AoE, using our auto attacks, and keeping us alive. All 4 of them are pretty important for the build and really are what it's kind of based around. So, Fire Strike, in case you haven't noticed, is our biggest damage dealer because that is where our Ooh, man, tongue-tied and wasn't even talking. That's where all of our auto attacks are going, so you can see all the Fire Strike happening. Explosive Strike is also in there as well, but we did take out Brimstone from the last video. Brimstone was activating so often, actually, that it was taking up tons and tons and tons of energy, and I don't have any room in the build to get any more energy regen in, so we're just going to get rid of Brimstone entirely. The damage drop is, I mean, it's noticeable, but at the same time, it wasn't enough to make me super concerned, and I'm okay with losing it to have enough energy to cast all my other abilities. So that's good news for us. But Fire Strike and Explosive Strike are both doing fantastic stuff in order for us to do auto attack damage. Word of Renewal is going to be our panic button. It's going to be our heal button for when we get into trouble. It's basically a backup potion, but it's going to heal us for about 20% of our maximum life and another 1,000 flat healing on top of that afterwards. So super, super handy. It is also going to be giving us Aether and Chaos resistance, I believe. Yeah, Aether and Chaos at the end, and then I think it does one more thing. Let me see. Oh, that's right. It reduces a lot of CC on our character if we manage to get stunned, frozen, whatever. Yeah, and on top of the CC reduction, it's giving us movement speed. So I'm sure you can tell at this point, but this build does require a lot of movement, a lot of diving, ducking, dodging, and weaving, as well as kiting. So if we're not moving fast, we're going to die. And CC is a huge problem for that, so getting stunned, getting petrified, whatever, is bad. So Word of Renewal does a lot to prevent that stuff, and nothing about that can be understated. Now, our next ability up is going to be the Thermite Mine, as well as Hellfire Mine, the upgrader for it. The ability itself does a lot of damage. You can see it a lot in the video. They're just laying down underneath big, hefty enemies, and they do a lot of fire and chaos damage. But on top of that, they are also reducing fire and chaos resistance. So when we drop them underneath enemies, those resistances drop hard, meaning that we can do our main forms of damage. And since we're on the subject, our main forms of damage for this build are going to be lightning, fire, and chaos. All three are going to be pretty nutty, so we benefit a lot from elemental damage in this kit. If you find elemental gear during the leveling process, it's never a bad idea because 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Now, after our thermite mines, we're going to move over to mortar trap as our fourth and final big ability. Mortar trap is actually incredibly useful. It only does one type of damage that we, well, no, it does 2, depending on our upgrades for it, but it does fire and lightning damage, and we have a couple of modifiers on it that are going to allow it a chance to stun people, as well as get a bigger AoE. On top of that, there is some gear in this kit that we'll talk about later that gives us the ability to summon 2 mortar traps, which is fantastic. Now, in this video, I switched some devotions onto mortar trap for use, and that is going to be the Fisher. So you'll see it popping off right now. At the time of the video, mortar trap, I don't believe has any devotion attached to it, but Fire Strike is using Fisher. So what you're going to want to do is change mortar trap to Fisher, because we're going to have 2 mortar traps. They fire pretty often, they hit in an AoE. They're going to activate Fisher almost as often, or at least consistently enough that it doesn't matter. And then we're going to switch Fire Strike over to Tempest, which isn't featured in this video because right now we're rocking Ultos as the big devotion for this. But Tempest does a lot of what Ultos does, and it doesn't waste the devotion on cold damage or some other stuff that Ultos was doing that I didn't like. So Tempest gonna be a lot better, but we'll talk about that later. Now, in terms of other abilities going on in this kit, we've got Flame Touched is going to give us some fire damage, offensive ability. Temper is okay, but you're going to get some passive points into Temper just from your gear through this, so putting a point or 2 into Temper isn't bad. Blast Shield, also incredibly useful, but it is going to give you a small shield, huge deflect chance, which is a chance to dodge projectiles, and that is also going to give you pierce and elemental resistance. Now that only activates when you drop below 60% health, so it's got a little bit of a, tag on it, but also incredibly useful ability for keeping our squishy asses alive. Ranged Expertise is the first Inquisitor passive that you're going to be looking at. It's mostly just so we can dual wield and we get attack speed with it as well as elemental damage. The pierce damage isn't a big deal, but it is there. It is around, and it's, I don't know, hooray. Bursting Around is another Inquisitor ability. It is basically a backup Fire Strike, and it has a 24% chance to activate. So basically every 4 attacks will get a bursting round, and considering that we're attacking at 200% attack speed with this build, you can imagine that that's pretty good. I think it comes out to about 3.7 attacks per second. So basically we get a bursting round every 1, maybe 1.5 seconds. It's really cool. Storm Spread activates 22% of the time, kind of the same way that Bursting Round does, but Storm Spread is more of a shotgun ability. This one's dealing lightning damage, and you can probably catch it in the video, or you've seen it so far, but it's in a fan. It's in a shotgun type. Ooh, that monster shrine just dumping everybody in that corner. It's a shotgun type ability, and the projectiles each do their own damage. Mostly they're going to do lightning damage, but this is one of the abilities that you're going to want to activate closer up, because if all of the projectiles from your Storm Spread hit a single target, you're basically doing 4 times the damage. So 4 times the damage up close. If you only manage to hit him with 1 from really far away, then you're going to lose some of that. This is the struggle for this build. These big ass tanky enemies who can stun us and run us down are the absolute bane of my existence. So with the Purifier right now, our stun reduction is only, I want to say it's like 65%. and you're seeing me just spam potions and the word of renewal to stay alive while these stupid guys just don't die, run at us, and light us up with their stupid damage. It is awful. I'm trying to space between my Inquisitor seals for maximum effectiveness, but it is still really hard when those big enemies are barreling down on you and they just keep coming because these Aether Shrines do nothing but shit them out. It is so unfortunate. Anyway, this is the biggest weakness for this class, but as long as you can kite effectively, you should be able to make easy work of everything. Now back to our build. So, we got Storm Spread out of the way, no more Word of Renewal. Aura of Censure is an aura ability from the Inquisitor. You're going to get a burn. It's basically an AoE that's going to happen around you at all times. You get a 20% chance to disrupt target. You get damage reduction, and it is just fantastic to have. It's going to couple really well with all of your damage types, all the damage that you deal. It's just kind of a no-brainer not to take. Deadly Aim is more damage on our crits, and with everything going on in this build, I think at the moment, as of the video, it can do up to about 30-35% crit damage. With some changes that I made, I think we got it up to about 45-50%, depending on all the parameters, but still really, really good. Crits do huge damage for this build, and it's definitely good for any ranged auto attack based damage dealer to have crit damage. And then lastly, a newer skill that we've taken for the build that wasn't present in the last video is called Inquisitor's Seal. You saw it when well, you can see it right now. I'm kind of kiting around for them. They're only 2 points in the Inquisitor's Seal to begin with, because most of what I wanted was the crit damage on the modifier to it. I can't remember the name of it. And also the seals do damage, but the seals actually scale with player bonuses. So the damage that they do is all fire based, and since we're a big fire damage dealing class, they're going to be dealing lots of damage. Super good. They also give us some defensive options like deflect chance, which you can get from the modifier. We actually get 25% deflect chance. So deflect is avoiding projectiles, and that is fantastic if you're standing inside a seal, because this build has a lot of deflect built into it. It's really helpful. I think with all things considered, when we're standing inside of the Inquisitor's Seal with Blast Shield up, we have a 71% chance to deflect. So we're basically dodging every projectile that comes our way, and it is fantastic. On top of that, you can also get another 10% crit damage, as well as flat elemental damage standing inside the seal. That's where I put most of the points instead of, the base ability. I put 2 in there, and I think I ended up putting about 7 into the modifier for it, as well as 1 into the modifier that gives us the ability to get that 25% deflect chance. Super good. Now, devotions, got to talk about those. In this build, I had both Hound and Eel. Actually, we kept Eel, but we got rid of Hound, so that we could use Tempest and take out Altos. But as far as what you're seeing right now, the devotions are going to be Eel. It's cheap, gives us defensive ability, move speed, pierce resistance, and deflect chance, which is always good. Jackal, super cheap, is giving us energy, which is really a big point of this build. You have to have a lot of energy because you do waste a lot. Ooh, and this boss is absolutely a nightmare because there are so many Aether Clouds. There's so much dodging for us to do as well, and if he does get a hit, it is a big, nasty hit. So we're trying to keep him at bay, but it's not always easy. You can see we're just covered in Aether Farts. It's insane. Also, kiting between the Inquisitor seals, so we can get maximum resistances, deflect chance, all that stuff. It's This was a little bit of an anxiety inducer, I'm not gonna lie to you. Keeping this man away and keeping my health up at the same time while not getting one punch is rough. So, good thing the build survived. Absolutely super happy with that. Just took a little bit more brain power than I wanted it to. Back to the devotions. Ghoul is up next. That's going to give us physique, spirit, defensive ability, a little bit of lifesteal, and the ability is actually a huge attack speed buff. So, going to give us a bunch of attack speed, big lifesteal on top of that, and also physical resistance. So, the the activatable ability, or not the passive ability on Ghoul is super helpful. Spider is up next. That's going to give you % cunning, % spirit, and flat versions of both of those as well, on top of offensive ability, attack speed, and defensive ability. Quill is your elemental damage. It's going to give you Aether resistance, percentage energy, percentage defensive ability, health, and flat energy as well. So lots of base stat buffs there that are really, really helpful for our kit. Magi is next. You're getting fire damage, defensive ability, elemental resistance, attack speed, physique, fire resistance, reduced CC, flat fire damage, flat burn damage, and the Fissure skill, which I mentioned earlier. But Fissure is going to shoot up a tiny volcano that does some damage and has a chance to stun when it hits people, which is really, really incredibly super helpful. Now, I said in this video we have it on Fire Strike, but I definitely think it's better on Mortar Trap because of the AoE, the amount of times that Mortar Trap can attack. It's going to activate just as often, and I think it's just as good there because Fire Strike needs to be on the Tempest devotion. Now, after Magi, there is Rowan's Crown. That's going to give us elemental damage, spirit, defensive ability, and elemental resistance, and it is going to give us the I think it's Elemental Storm. The Elemental Storm ability, which is just an elemental damage puddle that reduces elemental resistance. And like I said earlier, since we're 2 out of 3 elements, it's definitely going to help hit harder. You can see them. They're a little bit tough to notice when all this stuff is said and done, but yeah, they're little like purple, bluish, dark blue puddles of lightning. And they look a lot like the Inquisitor's Seal, if we're being honest, but black in the middle. Pretty dope. Anyway, Hydra is next. Hydra is Hydra's good. I can't say that it's bad, but it's definitely not as much as I want it to be. But anyway, it's going to give us offensive ability, all damage, attack speed, lifesteal, and slow resistance. Those are the big stats for Hydra that we need. Oswin's Torch is our one and only big boy outer rim devotion, and that's going to give us percentage offensive ability, fire and flat fire damage, chaos resistance, crit damage, movement speed, burn and flat burn damage, maximum fire resistance, and Meteor Shower. Meteor Shower is going to activate basically a rain of meteors down from the sky. They don't do anything more than damage, but they're still pretty fantastic because of the amount of just AoE that they cover and damage that they can deal. Super cool looking and fun. So yeah, you can see them dropping down there. They look a little bit like the mortars, but you can tell the difference, I hope. They're all the same color, so. Ooh. Did I mention that this build can crash your computer if there is enough stuff going on? Playing through Port Valbury, I was definitely dropping the frame rate because there are instances in this key dungeon that will ratchet up the requirement for my PC, and there are so many effects going on. It's like, ooh, it's rough. But at the same time, super rewarding because there's lots of damage, lots of fun stuff to look at. I'm having a good time. Now, Ultos, again, I got rid of it. Ultos is doing lightning damage, but it's also doing cold damage. And the passive that it was providing isn't much better, I think, than the Tempest passive, which is doing just lightning damage and electrocute damage, which are much more good for our build. So Tempest is lightning, flat damage, lightning buff damage, physique, offensive and defensive ability, lightning resistance, stun reduction, as well as total speed, and a chance to stun on crit with its passive. We've also taken Hawk 2 out of 3, which is going to be crit damage and offensive ability. And it turns out I did not give myself enough time to wrap everything up in a nice little bow for this video. I don't want it taking much more than 25 minutes, but since we're at the end, near the end, let's talk about the gear before I run out of time to do that. So for both of our weapons, we have got a Mythical Exterminus and a Mythical Devil Tongue. They're going to be doing fire and chaos damage, while also modifying a Fire Strike and providing some special attacks on their own. Really good stuff there. Helmet is the Mythical Mask of Infernal Truth. This is going to be adjusting Mortar Trap to give us an extra Mortar Trap, as well as reduce the energy cost of it. We've also got Mythical Band of Eternal Pyre. We've got Combustion Band and Tainted Ruby of Gardal. The Ruby is going to give us a passive, which is super helpful with our kit. The Combustion skill on Combustion Band and the Flame Patch from Band of Eternal Pyre, all really, really helpful. Armor is going to be the Mythical Shroud of Illusion. Ward of Illusion is the passive that it gives us, which is another 10% chance to avoid projectiles with 70 defensive ability. Super helpful. Hellforged leg plates are going to give us points into Bursting Round and the Ring of Flame passive. And then we've got Cortosion Scrolls on our shoulder, which gives us +3 to Big One, which is a Mortar Trap ability. But I will say I am looking for a replacement for the shoulders, still on that train. Gloves are the Mythical Quick Draw Gloves. These are giving us attack and casting speed, as well as the Quick Draw attack. Super. Well, definitely need new gloves as well, but these are kind of the best that I'm rocking at the moment. The Mythical Cord of Violent Decay, which is giving us +2 to Thermite and Hellfire Mine, but does not actually give us any solid fire or chaos damage, so that's probably got to change soon. The boots are going to be Golemborn Greaves, mainly because they offer a lot of defensive stats, as well as the Golemborn passive, 25% chance when we're hit to get 300 armor and some retaliation, as well as attack speed reduction. And then it was not in this video, but the metal that we're rocking is Korvac's Brand, which is going to give 15% weapon damage to Fire Strike, 6% of attack damage converted to health to Fire Strike, as well as a passive that has a 20% chance to be used while we are dual wielding guns, shooty guys. So that's not bad either. All things considered, there are a couple items in this build that need to be changed for better stuff, but we are kind of rocking the upper tier of good gear. All that being said, it'll all be in the Grim Dawn, or not the Grim Tools link, so if you haven't checked that out, it's there. But that is the end of the video. That's the end of the build. Let me know what you think. I'll be back next time. I really want to finish out the pet build that I had going on this channel, so we'll talk about that. But anyway, that's it for me, everybody. Peace out. See you later.